Hello and welcome to a very late episode of Nobody's Listening. I'm
This
Echo.
is Whisper.
go, go ahead. I'm trying to cut you off.
No, I just said this is Whisper.
So today's subject, despite how on fire the world might seem, uh, have you thought about the supernatural? Have you thought about how things could get so much worse if we had ghosts?
Have you
um,
thought of the spoopening?
yeah, yeah, we've had all of this happening, all of these happenings in the world. It would be nice if I could stop living through major historical events, but that is not how the cards are played right now. So instead, we've opted to deal for talking about spooky things.
Specifically, some spooky things that we've had some firsthand experiences with. We went kind of down, well, you went down a rabbit trail that you kind of dragged me down with some green text, and we'll do that off and on where we'll like troll around various places for
Well, I think
spooky real
I mean
stories.
those who know what a green text is know exactly where those come from.
A, but
uh, and if you don't know, you don't know. If you gotta ask, you don't know. And for those of you who do know, I mean, you know what the rules are. Uh, uh, but yeah, on that note, I think part of what's fun, I think everyone's got a couple of really creepy stories. I myself, I'm not really, I, I don't know. I mean, I've got a big old poster, the I Want to Believe poster. And I think there's a part of me that would like to think that there is something, you know, I guess somewhat supernatural. It's interesting. It adds another layer of depth to, bump my mic stand. It adds another layer of depth to kind of this whole human experience. But in my experience, and I wonder if part of that could just be, I just don't, I just don't. 9 times out of 10, I don't believe it. When I hear a lot of people's really wild stories, I'll listen, and I like the ones that are really good. But when they're like, "Oh, my grandfather died, and he was like, look for pennies, and I find pennies," or some other very similar type of story, I'm always like, "Right, neat," and I carry on. It's
Well,
just
there was the friend you had with the feathers. That
no.
was an
Okay, that's a
interesting
very
one.
fair point. Okay,
Because
so
that's one where it
that's
happened.
one that I can't explain, and it's part of why I don't know where I fall in this category. Okay, I'll explain that one pretty briefly. I had a friend who was a very good friend at a very dark point in my life. Uh, Her and her sister would come visit me uh, very frequently. This is starting to sound really weird when you say it like that. I was homeless, so let's clear that part up. And she'd bring like coffee, food, cigarettes. It was actually really really awesome. Uh, and she had this thing where the sign for, she was like, the thing that I look out for is feathers, and I was like, oh, that's interesting. And the real weird irony was, right after she started mentioning that, she would start finding feathers in my place. I was staying I had a very bougie homeless life. I was in a greenhouse, so not quite homeless. I did have a roof of sorts over my head, but it wasn't quite in a house. uh so um I went to her father's funeral, and when they lifted the coffin, there was a bunch of feathers under it. And I have never been able to shake that part out of my brain because no one put them there. They weren't there before. The coffin was raised, mind you. It was on kind of like a pedestal. And it wasn't like a bunch of decorative feathers. They almost reminded me of like red hawk feathers or owl feathers. They had kind of like a different color tone to them. It was very, very strange. And it's one of those, like, when I tell that, I'm actually really happy you reminded me of that. When I retell that story, it's one of those things. If you weren't there and you didn't know that background, but her family knew about that too, which is also really interesting. And her mom was the first one who said anything. She went, "Oh my god, there they are again." And I just was like, there is genuinely something to this, and this is very weird. And I was just a bystander.
I was
Um,
gonna say, I remember when you first told me about it, I didn't believe you until you started like letting me know every time a feather was found and
yeah, no, it was very
told me about
strange.
that at that funeral, and I was like, no fucking way.
it was what was strange. Okay, so the one thing that blew my mind was I remember I found one under my pillow. I didn't have down pillows. Uh and that's when I was like, "Oh, that's really weird." I had like the oh, what do they use? Some sort of it reminds me of like the cotton stuffing you used to get in those big bags if your mother did like knitting or whatever or sewing. Uh anyway, I didn't have down pillows, but I kept finding feathers under my pillows. And I was saving them for a long time and I cannot for the life of me find where I was putting them.
Hmm.
Uh just because, you know. And it was very interesting. I don't know. That's one element of something I guess one could say could be vaguely supernatural. Given the circumstances, I've never been able to let it go. It was very strange.
I think it's just one of those ones that, yeah, it's unexplainable. I think in that friend's case, they had always regarded it as a good thing, though. Like
Yes.
they were
No, she
convinced it
was
was a good sign. So this wasn't like a spooky thing for them, other than it's unexplainable.
nope, she said that it was a sign that she was basically being like watched and it was a reminder to kind of like keep the faith. Ironically, like the night after I found my first one, I went over to their place and she did like this big like massive prayer ceremony. It was very strange. I don't know.
Mhm.
She said she was very Christian. Her boyfriend at the time, not the guy we met, uh, was like a really high ranking Mason, Freemason. And I used to collect antique lighters, and I had managed to get a really nice one that was like a sterling silver, and it had a Freemason logo on the front. And I had saved it because I knew somewhere along my line I was going to bump into another Freemason. It just happened to be the line of life that I was running at the time. And so I gave it to him. And he just asked me straight up, he goes, "Where did you find this?" And I was like, "I just got it at an antique shop." And he's like, "Well, thank you for returning it." And I was like, "That wasn't," I looked at her too, and I was like, "That was an odd interaction." But like his immediate thing was like, query of, "Where did you find this?" Or no,
That's I don't recall this.
I
Yeah.
think he said, "Who gave this to you?" I think that's what he said. I think he said, "Who gave this to you?" He was very much like but he was very incredulous. Like he knew what it was more than I did. And I was like, "That's weird." Because, I mean, it's just it's a lighter with a logo on it. I didn't think anything of it.
Clearly, there was something more to that lighter than you knew.
I don't know. They ended up splitting up anyway, though. I forget why. She was always in a fucking mess with that guy, though. But I think another one. I'll let you open up that one. The Mr. Phase.
I think we should start with the curtains, honestly.
Yeah, you want to start with that one?
Because, well, I mean, we've both had our various experiences. Like that one was very much related to you, and while I knew about like the feathers and your experience with that particular incident, I myself never had a ton. I think the closest I came to in terms of like supernatural, creepy, weird stuff that I can own is being a kid and having clown dolls move in my room, which is a whole long story that pretty much comes down to I can't determine quite how or why or when, but the short of the story is they moved across my dresser from one end to the other over the course of a night and freaked me the fuck out. But as things fall around me,
I was just
stuff
about to
goes.
say, but you just moved, so
But I
um,
think one of the first ones that we had shared was not long after we had moved into the apartment we were in. And we had decided to do wine and music night, which was like a thing of ours, is buy a bottle of wine or whatever booze of the night we wanted. And that night happened to be wine. Get nice and sloshed and go through music trails and just song after song go through. We were pretty well into that, I think.
I think. Oh man, I think by the time the peak of this evening happened, it must have been what? It was after midnight. It was probably pushing like 1 in the morning.
I think so. And somehow we broke away from music to spooky stories and spooky stuff. We kind of shared a few of our childhood experiences of
Yeah. Well,
stuff that could be construed as spooky, especially because we had been on a train during the days of listening to those like spooky stories read by somebody, written by somebody else, sort of thing. I guess being overly critical of the ones that oh Jesus Christ. Okay. Um, The ones that sounded bad.
What the hell was that?
I don't know. Shit's falling everywhere. Things that were like didn't sound real, didn't sound plausible, or like, no, you wouldn't tell a story this way if this happened to you, versus the ones we would go to bed that night still thinking about and be like, hey, did you ever figure out that story? We somehow got on that subject.
So yeah, at that point, I was really into, I guess, like there was a lot of horror YouTubers. This is before they were sourcing exclusively every story off of Reddit, or maybe they were and they just weren't calling them Reddit horror stories. They were just saying true horror stories. I couldn't never tell you where they're getting their sources from, but I was like, oh, I like this. I mean, a little weird fact about me: I like horror stories. Um, as much as I don't really, it's so hard to explain. I don't really have like a full buy-in or a dog in this fight about supernatural ghosts, you know, religion to a lesser degree, I guess, things like that. I just don't, not my cup of tea. I don't care. It's fun. It's interesting. Like I said in the intro, like it adds a layer of depth, and I've always found it fascinating. But when it comes to like horror stories, that's always been kind of my jam. And we were going on like a big horror kick, listening to a bunch of them, and we were the whole time we're both just like being absurdly critical. We're like, oh man, this is just a total LARP. This is some nonsense. And I was like, so let's change the mood, because we were both getting to the point where we were like, we're getting fed up with this. It's too much fakery. Too many people like, I had a spooky thing happen to me once, and oh my god, it was terrifying. You just have to believe me. And we were like, doubt.
We're also
And
starting to see like repeats of the same style of writing too, which had us convinced, oh no, somebody's got to be shilling out these stories. It's not
no, I think there's just a lot of people who hear a story that they adhere to, and maybe there is like an element of,
copycats, I guess.
I was gonna say, maybe there's an element of things where there is some sort of repetition in a way. uh you started getting really freaked out, and this is where this is a long time ago, like 7 or 8 years ago, long time ago, and my memory is a tiny bit hazy about this, but I certainly don't forget the moment. But I remember either you and I were both freaked out about something happening with the window or looking outside, but I distinctly remember that you were the one who was chiefly concerned about it.
It
And
was me. And I mean, to be fair, I wig out really easy. That's the biggest difference
no,
between
this
the
is
both
very
of
true.
us is while we both like horror, I admit I wig out super easy. Horror is not my skill set, and while I enjoy good horror, if it sticks with me, you've got a problem now. Whereas he can just brush it off and he's like, it's whatever.
Because I know it's just media. It's just a good story.
But I think it was because I kept looking out the window because I couldn't shake the feeling that something was
I
out
think
there, and
I
you were
kept
making
looking out the
fun of me for
window.
it because your back was to it. I was sitting on the sofa and your back was to
Mm.
the window because I kept like, I don't know, there was something out there. That's the closest I can get to the feeling that I had, was that something wasn't right. Something was outside of the window.
Well,
It was outside.
I remember you kept telling me, like, is there something out there? And I said, no, there's nothing out here. And at like one point, I stood up and I looked. And so, for a little bit of backstory, we were on the top story of our apartment. And when you look outside, the window that we're referencing, there is no deck below it. There's nothing below it. It's just a straight drop down to the ground.
You
And
just see trees.
there's just trees. And I think at that point it was winter, so they were all naked.
Yeah.
It was not raining. That I do remember oddly.
It
Uh
wasn't windy either.
no, it was actually a relatively still night. I don't know why I remember that, but I do. And I just remember you saying like there's something up with the window. And I was like, okay, fine. And at one point, the point of the story was, you basically asked me, you're like, hey, just close the blinds. I just want
I had to ask you a couple times. That's why I said I
Well, yeah,
remembered your
because I
back
just
was
was
to
like,
the window.
whatever, dude. It's
No, 'cause
nothing.
you're sitting there making fun of me, and I'm wigging out over here like, "Fucking shut the blinds, man. Something ain't right."
No, dude, I was very much like, you know what, dude, this is all a big. This is not. All right, fine, fuck it. I'll close the blinds.
We had the red curtains up too.
And I got up to go close the blinds, and before I could touch that little string rope thing, they fall out of the brackets, and we both just like look at each other, thoroughly freaked the hell out, because I'm sitting here thinking, well, that was a hell of a coincidence, and she's like a mile
He's
away
just
from the
fucking looking at
window.
me, and I'm like, "It fucking knew. I told him to close the blinds, and it fucking knew."
And it was I'm sitting here like, I'm gonna put these back up and just close them and pretend nothing ever happened. And yeah, it was very freaking weird. I can't deny that. The odds of that type of coincidence. The weirdest thing was I don't know why they fell. I didn't touch them. I didn't even make it to the string to like pull them closed. There was no pressure on them or anything. They just fall out of the socket. And
Well, to be clear, the blinds hadn't fallen. It was the curtains.
no, it was the blinds. The whole unit of the blinds, because if you have them pulled up, they're kind of like a long stalk. It was the blinds that fall.
Yeah, no, the curtains went too.
Did they really? I don't
Yeah,
remember
because I
that.
distinctly remember. So the whole thing is they latch on. So you lift them up, hook them, and then they rest against the wall. They fell straight down. That's why I was so freaked out over it.
I distinctly remember the blinds falling because the thing that I remember putting back was this is why it was so confusing to me was because the way that the blinds are mounted, uh, there's like a gate that opens from the front, and you have to pull them out, and that was what was so weird.
Yeah, all I know is you never actually touched them. You had stood up to finally
Yeah,
cover the window, which is what I was begging you for, and that's all it took. And they jumped off.
yeah, no, it was just nothing. Either way, point being, nothing was touched, and it was really freaky. But the funny part being that she was so concerned about the window, and something happened with the window, and I'm sitting here going, "Well, that's a little fucky."
Well, no, man. And then like trying to go to sleep, you go to the bedroom. That our bedroom window doesn't matter. It looks over deck. It's looking at the same fucking trees. Like it was not a good night. I sleep on the window side. That was not a good night.
Another one. This is actually one that I don't know how to explain, and it is to me, it's still kind of freaky in a way. Uh, so when I'm in the shower, I don't know why I like to sit at the bottom. I'm a basic
It's a
guy.
freak.
I just it's so comfy though. I don't know. One day
Hold this section of the shower. I'm just saying.
people will embrace the sitting in the shower. And so I'm sitting in the shower and I get this just wash of like dread. And I'm like, what the hell is going on? And as I'm kind of like piecing my thoughts together, I'm realizing that there's someone on the other side of the shower curtain. There's definitely for sure 100% without a doubt someone on the other side of the shower curtain. And the freaky part was in my brain, I could picture their face. I knew it wasn't her. I knew it was somebody else. And I couldn't get the face out of my brain. I knew exactly what they looked like. And it kept building. And it must have only been maybe like a minute and a half, realistically. But in that moment, it kept building up to such an intensity. Eventually I snapped and I was like, oh my God, I have to open the curtain and see if I'm crazy. And I opened the curtain and of course no one's there. And I closed the curtain and I wonder to myself, why was I so freaked out? Continue on with shower as if nothing happens. Okay. A couple days pass. Same exact thing happens. Unprompted, wasn't even thinking about it. And I'm like, okay, at this point, I'm reminded of the previous time. I'm like, okay, this is weird. This is freaking me out. Why does this keep happening? The following time it happens, I'm thinking to myself, I'm just freaking myself out because I've had this happen 2 times in a row, both times with the exact same thought process. Now I'm just amping myself up. This happens to me about, I don't know, 5 times before, ironically, she mentioned something to me.
So yeah, no, for because I think it went on for a week or so,
So for me, no,
roughly.
for me, it went on about 2 to 2.5 weeks before you finally said something to me.
No, that's about right.
It
Yeah,
it took a
but it
it,
was the same idea where I was in the shower and it was just this irrational dread and fear of I could not close my eyes and put them under the water because there was somebody in the bathroom and there was somebody on the other side of the shower curtain. And being the wiggy whammy person I am, that's all it takes to freak me out is I'm fucking naked in a shower and there's someone on the other side and help. But no, I think what was crazy was the exact same feeling. It was a feeling of dread that would build. And eventually I would do the same thing. I would just rip open the shower curtain because I was like, I can't take it anymore and I can't deal with this. But it was also this very strong understanding. It was just on the other side, and the face was the clearest thing. I knew exactly what the face looked like as well. And at this point, we hadn't talked to each other
Nope.
until I brought it up to you. So this isn't something we like were sharing and, over dinner or anything like that. These were distinctly separate experiences.
Well, I think what really fucked with my head was after it happened the third time was when I was like, okay, the eerie part was that that same element stuck with me was the face. I was so certain that I knew that if I didn't do something, this face was going to poke its way into the shower, and I don't know what was going to happen after that. But the really funny part for me was I had to work myself up to like just here we go. I'm going full fight mode. I'm going to die with my dick out. If there's someone out there, I'm going swinging. And when I'd open the curtains, of course there's nobody there. But I knew that too. Like mentally, I was like, I have to kind of like break this spell of terror, for lack of a better accurate or allegory. But it was so eerie that it kept happening. But the freakiest part was it never got less intense. It never felt less.
You never felt more brave. Like you
No,
never
every
felt more
time it
equipped to
happened,
handle it.
it felt like the first time, and I was like, oh, this is some seriously freaky shit. And that's when you brought it up to me, I shit a brick because I did not expect you to remotely describe same thing that I did.
Well, I think that was the part is it got to the point where it was overwhelming. Like I needed to ask. I had to ask
And
if
is
it was
it was
just
so
me
stupid
or
because it was unprompted. I think we were both just sitting down and you just said, because I had mentioned something about, oh, I want to take a shower, and that's when you're like, hey.
yeah, no, because our schedules were so offset that I think that was like one of the first few
Mhm.
times we were actually gonna be able to shower together, sort of thing. But yeah, no, I was actually terrified to bring that up to you. And here's the thing, shared experience. We never actually described the face in the beginning of that conversation where you were confirming, yes, you'd had a feeling in the
No, the
shower.
okay, so I kind of want to take this part of the story over a little bit.
Sure.
Part of what was so important to me was I knew when she started describing what she was talking about, I wanted to keep my mouth shut because I did not want to influence what she was about to say, because what she was beginning to describe was so close to what I was feeling, obviously in her own words. But I was like, okay, so I'm glad I'm not is a weird sort of Schadenfreude. I'm glad I'm not the only one who's suffering through whatever this is. It's freaking
Yeah,
weird.
don't say that to somebody who freaks out easy, especially when they describe stuff. That is so not comforting. It's just one of those
And
I start shitting bricks.
I kept my mouth shut. And the only time I actually said anything was when you said, it's like I can see them. And I said, you know exactly what their face looks like. And you went, yes. And I said, I'll bet you, I want to hear your description first.
Yeah, yeah. I didn't like that either.
And so what was creepy about the face was it was just this pale guy with crazy buggy eyes, not like the dude who could pop them out of his head, just like he had just like way too wide, like
Just too wide.
gacked out, kind of like on drugs wide, and just like this crazed smile. And I knew for it, that's so, but it's so, when you say it like that, it sounds so hokey, you know.
It does. I think really the cinching part of the story is the fact that we described it. I think we each took turns describing pieces of the face as
Mm-mm.
well. Like
No,
after
I
I gave an
distinctly
initial
remember saying,
description.
I want to hear your side first because I did not want to influence because I was going to describe to you essentially what you described. And I said, yes, that's basically exactly what I see in my head too. It was so
Yeah,
fucking
no, it was
weird.
just the eyes were just unnaturally wide. It's like he didn't blink.
No, in my brain he also, but that's the freaky thing though, is it's like it wasn't like I was seeing him. It was like I just in my head it's like when you're trying to think of a face you recognize.
Hmm.
Like, oh, what's your grandmother look like? And you can think of the face. It was very much like I can think of the face that I'm about to see, and I'm going to recognize it, and it's going to look just like how I visualized it. And it was so fucking weird, dude.
But that and the smile, and it was a rigid smile. That's
Yes.
why it wasn't just crazed, it was rigid,
The
like the
closest
eyes. It
the
was
closest thing that comes to mind as like an eerie, I don't know, I kind of want to say like Jeff the Killer, but that's just too memey. because but it's also overblown because like the Jeff the Killer smile goes like way too up, like up towards the ears and shit. It's different, but it kind of had like a similar vibe of like unnatural and it broached that uncanny valley where it almost didn't look right.
Yeah. But that was the first time talking about it, realizing we had felt the same way during the same times, had the same face in our brains, like super clear in our brains during these events that we hadn't previously shared.
Yeah, no, like I remember asking too. I was like, "And is he pale or is he dark or what?" And you're like, "No, he's pale." And I was like, "Okay, this is really freaky," because in my head he was super pale too, and with like a receding hairline. Like it's so creepy how I can remember like all of it still.
Well, that was the only thing that was clear is that was
It was
the
a lot
face.
of face. No facial hair, no stubble. It was very
No,
almost like a chubby
hairless.
face, almost like he had some extra pounds. Very fucking weird. Very fucking weird.
But that's who was on the other side of the curtain every time.
And then it just went away. Like it tapered off like nothing happened. And it was funny because I remember I am kind of an asshole. I will admit, as a joke, we were in the shower together, and I mentioned I was like, "Oh, hey, do you remember Mr. Face?" And you just looked at me and you went, "Fucking shut up."
No, because for whatever reason, I was severely convinced the more we talked about it and gave it a name, it could come back. Like it was gone and it needed to stay out of the house for a certain period of time. Otherwise, it was going to come back. And I don't know why. I mean, I wake easy, so I'm assuming it was in my brain and it terrified me enough.
I don't know.
But I wouldn't talk about it for like a good, what, 2 years afterward. I did not want it brought up or mentioned.
No, you straight up told me you're like, I just don't want to talk about it. I was like, all right, that's fine, and I'm okay with that because it is one of those things. Like, and it's silly. I how do I explain this? I kind of take and I'm not trying to sound smart by quoting Einstein, but I like Einstein's approach where I think there was like a quote or like a rumor that he had garlic on his door, and they were like, "You don't believe in vampires," and he goes, "I don't have to believe to make it work," you know. And I very much appreciate that kind of line of logic of even if I don't believe in supernatural, supernatural might believe in you. And I'm like, I just because I have not been uh privy to or victim of or aware of any of this sort of thing doesn't mean it doesn't exist. It's part of why I don't buy it. I've never had anything strong enough. Like even these experiences, and as strong as they were and as significant as they were at the time, once time goes on, you kind of go, yeah, I still don't know about that shit. That's
I
where
was
I
like, yeah,
am.
we can talk about it pretty casually now, but it was just at that time.
And the silliest thing is, what do you do? Like who do you talk to about that and say, so what do I do about the weird, creepy ghost man? Is he a ghost? I don't even know. What does that qualify as? Haunting
I
my
was like, is this where
shower.
you start contacting people to exercise your fucking third story
Is that the
apartment?
right direction to even go? I don't know. That's the thing, is it's like, I don't know.
How did he get it in the first place? Who invited this fucker?
It's stupid. It's stupid shit. And I think that's the hard part is you open up so many doors and there's so much room for error and there's so much conjecture. And is it real? I don't know. I still err on the same side of I think a lot of things are just overactive imagination coupling with, a good spooky vibe. Like the whole thing with the blinds. If that was under any other circumstance, that would have been insignificant. We would have gone, "Oh, that was weird. The blinds just jumped out of the window,"
Mhm.
but we would have carried on. But because that evening was starting to build off of a becoming spooked,
How much of it was the
it
anticipation of the spoopy
amplified that experience
versus
so much, at least in my opinion. But the really creepy part was you were so concerned with something happening at the window, you could have been concerned about anything else, you
ah,
know.
it was the window. Like my brain was very much tuned into the fact that there was
And the
something
silliest
fucking
thing
wrong
is, if you
outside the
look out the
window.
window, it's nothing but trees. Like you won't. There's nothing of significant to see, and we're so high up. You know, I don't know. It was very strange.
Super weird. And I mean, it's not to be said that like for the second incident, It's possible we were exposed to the same stories. We were exposed, like, at the time, we might have still been listening to stuff that would
No, I
have given
don't.
us that impression.
I don't remember. And it's possible I don't remember too, but I don't remember making an association and going, "Oh, it's because of this story that seems
No, we
similar."
never did. I'm just saying it's possible we were exposed to the same media and that our brains did conjecture the same thing in the same experience, and we just coincidentally happened to come across the same type of spook.
You definitely
It's
gotta
just
keep on your mic though.
that's
Sorry, love.
just Oh, no, you're good.
I'm just
So
sure there's
used to
gonna be some
looking at
audio
people.
dropouts when you're looking over at me. We're trying a different type of recording setup. We realize.
Yeah, no, I'm not used to, like, staring away from somebody when I talk, so
Yeah, no, it's well, we have to figure that one out. But
yeah, it's my problem. Yeah, no, I mean, like, it's possible we got exposed to the same media and somehow created the same experience in our brains. It's not unheard of. It's just it's very it'd be uncanny if we somehow came up with the exact same fear and dread in the exact same scenario and experience.
I think what really wigged me out though was that first occasion that it happened for me was so intense. And the closest I can equate it to at the moment was kind of like a waking form of sleep paralysis because I've heard how people describe that, and I had a very similar type of experience. Like when it first hit me, it hit me out of nowhere. I wasn't thinking about anything spooky or depressing or
Yeah.
anxiety inducing. I was literally just taking a shower and chilling out.
Mhm.
And at that point, specifically, showers were like, you know, super peaceful. That's where I go to unwind and chill. And it made no sense. Again, we're going back like 7, 8 years, and it was very surreal to suddenly, out of nowhere, get this idea in my brain. Like, I think that's the other thing. Like, I've been freaked out before, and like when you hang a coat up in a different part of your house, and you wake up and you're like, "Oh God, who's that in the corner?" And then you realize it's just your coat.
Yeah.
That. But when you're having that moment, you're not thinking about what that person looks like, except for what you can see, and then just a shapely figure of somebody there. You're not concerned with what their face looks like because you're sitting there trying to puzzle out what it could be right then. When you're in a moment where you can't see beyond a curtain, you're not thinking about what the person looks like. I don't think. I think you're just concerned with the fact that somebody's there. So it was so eerie to me that in my head, I became so attached to the details of what this motherfucker's face looked like and
It
how
was a very clear
but I, without a shadow of a doubt, I knew that for some reason, if I took too long or something, I couldn't even explain it. That face was going to poke from the curtain. And
Mhm.
the really weird thing was, and I'm literally getting chills. It's so stupid. I literally knew that if that happened, that wasn't the end, but I couldn't even describe why. Like it was just one of those. It was bad news. It was bad news bears,
You didn't wanna actually
and you
have that
didn't
face
want to
poke through the
know
curtain.
why. And the funny part was, I knew the only way to dispel it was to open the curtain. And very much like I said, I was like, you know what? I'm gonna go out, dick swinging, baby. Let's go. And I threw open the curtain, and of course, no one was there. But that's the worst part was I knew that if I did that, that no one would be there. It's so strange. It's almost like if I let that go on long enough, would someone have been there? That's the freaky part.
I never wanted to find out, but like I said, this is also where I was like, I'm not going to close my eyes and put them under the water. I'm definitely opening this curtain of my two options. I don't need to.
The silliest part was it never hit me like while I was washing. It hit me when I was just chilling in the shower.
I was always standing, but it was about the time where I'd be like, all right, I'm gonna like actually wash up and get the shower portion done.
I can't remember if the other times happened when I was standing or sitting. Again, you got to be the sitter
I don't
gang.
sit, so for
You
me
got
it
to
was
be part of the
standing.
sitter gang, man. I'm telling you, it's where it's at.
Nah. Why would I go to the coldest part of the shower where the water is less hot
It's like a
when I could
shower and
have
a
the hot
sauna
water
combined, dude. You're missing
on me?
out.
It it is not, man. It is not.
Whatever.
You're
I'm a different
crazy. You
breed.
let all the heat out, man. And then you're
I'm a
like, it's
different
so
breed.
cold. Turn it hot so it burns you.
Yeah,
You're
it's
like,
a
but it's not
shower
cold
and a
down or
sauna
not
at the
hot down
same
here.
time.
Wasting hot water.
I don't know. I'm just enjoying this first world experience right now. I'm just sitting here in the shower going, ooh, it's a shower and a sauna. I love it.
I just like hot showers.
I stand up to wash. I still stand up and get the full blown shower experience, but I get two parts. I get the standing regular shower and I also get the sauna shower.
I want to sit and be warm. I'm going to take a fucking hot bath. Otherwise, I'm standing.
Oh my god. Look at these peons standing in their shower. And they could be sitting, luxuriating. I'm judging you. All of you.
Wasting hot water, wondering why the shower doesn't last as long, why the water heater's going out. Nah, you're just turning it up too hot so you can sit.
So
Feel
yeah,
like you're in a third world sauna.
those are I don't know. I've got a handful of others, but I don't know that I'm actually really super comfortable sharing them, if only because there's other parties involved and I'd actually really prefer to
Yeah.
have them on board. And some there's just an impossibility of ever getting that back, like Shelby. That's just never going to happen. Uh Old friend of mine from way back in the day. But that's again, it's like the silliest thing is like I've had some really what I would consider under any other circumstances concrete. You there is no like unshakable proof kind of thing for me at the very least experiences, and I still kind of go, ah, was that a one off? Was that a you know was that how do you finish that?
And you definitely had more than I did.
I
All of my
there was a
experiences were very much alone, but I'm kind of left in the same boat where I don't know how much of it is.
there was a period where that
I'm
was
just
kind
easily
of
weighed
like
out.
a major part of my existence, I suppose, where I don't know. I was involved in a group that was super into like the occult. That's the best way I can describe it. And a lot of naturally a lot of weird shit happened, but the silly part, and this is why I always look at it skeptically, is like when you're looking for it and trying to generate it, of course things happen. You're looking for results. At least that's how I see it now. But I think what's really eerie is like there are still a handful of experiences that
Well, there's one more you could share.
what's that?
How you knew my room was blue all those years ago.
I don't know. That's one of those ones. Like I don't. I'm not. Nah. I left that. I think I left that part of my life behind me intentionally.
Oh, that's fair. That's the only other one I know of that.
I'll keep it simple for the listeners because you opened the door. Sometimes you can do some things on your own. Uh, that's the best way I can describe that.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, spoopy stories, spoopy experiences.
Absolutely. Yeah. I don't know. Definitely. I mean, obviously, we're such a huge podcast that our massive listener base will be willing to comment. And if I've learned anything, it takes 100 people to get one comment. So
We might get a letter in the comments.
if you yeah no if you come across this and feel inclined, definitely feel free to share your piece, your criticism, or your own story.
Oh yeah, no, especially because like ours are unique to us,
I think that's
but
the big thing too, is many people's stories are very much unique to themselves.
yeah, so it probably doesn't sound as spooky as it was to us in those times or those moments. But maybe you got something where you're like, nah, I had a similar experience or an experience where I too felt in a similar fashion. It'd be fun to hear it.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Also, I mean, just it's a fucking nice break from World War III and you know, mysterious coof might kill you, might not, you don't know.
Mysterious coup for nuclear bombs. Tell me your spoopy ghost stories, man.
Yeah, no, I'm sorry. I'd much rather hear about your ghost stories right now. I've had enough. It's been how many years of this shit going on? I need a break. Let's go back to the regular spooky shit that we're used to.
Just for a bit.
The stuff we can't explain.
Uh,
Well, thank you for listening.
yeah, thank you for the impromptu audience of an impromptu podcast that's very, very behind.
Yeah, seriously. Now we'll get back to it. It's gonna be well, maybe not. We've got the baby on the way, so that's gonna put a little bit of
Yeah,
wrench in things. So you feel like
well,
listening to squalling baby as we try to record.
ideally we'd be recording when squalling is not occurring, but life happens. It is what it is.
But if depending on how things go, perhaps we'll pick this back up. We've been talking about it a lot. So if by any chance you've tried to catch any more of these, do know that this has not left our brain. We do want to kind of continue this. We would like it to become a regular thing. I think the hard part is just figuring out what to talk about, and we live with each other, so half of our conversation happens organically between the both of us, and every once in a blue moon one of us will look at the other and go, oh, we should do a podcast on that. And that's what's difficult is
Remembering not when we're 2/3 of the way done with the conversation.
yeah. So because the best part is when it's organic conversation instead of us sitting here staging it out and going, we talked about this.
Hmm.
This was the result. I think it's much more fun to actually sit here and talk, but right now is a retelling. So hey.
Yeah.
All right, I guess I'll sign us off. Thank you to listening to Nobody's Listening, and we'll hope to catch you on the next one. I'm not sure what the next one's going to be about, but I do have a bit of an idea. We've got a couple of subjects we want to tackle, so it's not like we're without material. I've been writing them down, so we'll see. Until next time.
Catch you next time.